welcome to the 12th sewing class. Today we'll have a very practical class. We'll be making a patch pocket. This is a patch pocket, how it looks like, and you are able to attach it to anywhere you want, on the dress, on the skirt, on the trousers. Even though when you buy it and you don't have this one, believe me, it's very simple to do, and we'll be making it today. To make it, I will use these pattern pieces. So basically, how the pattern piece work, you have one which is the pocket itself and the flap. Of course, if you don't want the flap, you don't need to sew it. All you need to attach is the pocket itself. But if you want the flap as well, then you will need to cut this pattern piece 2 times, because you need outer layer and inner layer. As you can see here, you have 1 layer here and 1 layer here, because you don't want to see edges once you flip it up. For the pocket, you need only 1 layer, as you can notice, this one. And here you can see that there are notches because we're going to fold it and then attach it to the, let's say, skirt. As here on the example, you see this line here, it was serged and then it was folded inside and then it was stitched, because whenever you put your hand inside, if you do not stitch that, it will come out. And why we do this, because we want to have a clean edge. As you remember, in the hem, or when we did the seam finishes, we folded in order to have clean edge. Okay, and other pieces that I'm gonna use are these hard paper pattern pieces, I would call them as well. They are a little bit smaller than the pattern piece itself, because this one has seam allowance, and this is the pocket size. So after I fold this area, it should be matching as well. And again, there are seam allowances, that's why this piece is smaller than the white pattern piece. Why we need the hard paper pattern? Because we need to create a correct shape for our pocket. If this is the final result of the pocket and I will match this, then you can see that it's absolutely identical. Because once we fix our edges, once we serge them, we will put this hard paper. From the last class, you can remember the trick when you have to gather the edge of the fabric in order to match the size. This is what we're gonna do. We will make a base stitch to create the gathering, and that will help us to make the perfect pocket shape. And we're going to do this for the flap in order to find the size that we want, and for the pocket itself. To make the patch pocket, I have already cut the base fabric where I will attach my pocket. I cut 2 pieces of flap, and also I cut the pocket itself. And this is all I will need to create one pocket. As a first step, I will serge the edges of my base fabric, and also I will serge the top of the pocket. Next step is to take your pocket. This is the right side of the pocket, No, wait, this is the right side of the pocket. Let's mark it, not too confused. So as I said, this is right side and here is wrong side. Wrong side and right side. Now we need to fold the upper layer. As you remember, on the pattern piece we had this this extra amount which is going to be folded and stitched later, and that's why we made notches on the side. It is approximately 1 inch extra, I would call it seam allowance, which has to be hidden inside of the pocket in order to create the clean edge. That's why we serged it. Now we need to fold it on the right side. This is what gonna be, this is how it will look on our, let's say, t-shirt. So we fold it on the right side like this. I have already pressed it, and then I will stitch 3/8 seam allowance down on each side. I'll do back tag, of course, and then I will reverse it to the wrong side. And since as I would stitch it on each side and after that reverse it, it will stay on place straight. So I fold it back to the right side now, and I'll pin it and stitch it. 3/8 seam allowance on each side. When you stitched it, you need to reverse the flap. Try to keep corners very sharp. Here we have the right side. And on the wrong side, I got this shape. I will press the top, and after I press it, I will place this hard paper into the pocket. And my goal is to fold the edges around this hard paper to create the shape of the pocket. And shortly I will show you the trick how to do it. You can see that I pressed it as it lies flat. Now I will make a base stitch starting from here around and finishing right here. And the base stitch will be as close to the edge as possible. As you remember, for the base stitch we have to make the maximum amount, like the maximum length of the stitch. On each machine you are able to regulate it. So I chose 5 stitches per inch on my machine. You can see that it's very pretty long, the stitch, and choose one or another side and start to gather it, and you would see that the fabric slowly gets gathered at the edge. The same thing with the opposite side. First I will do a little bit gathering, and then I will place the fabric, the heart paper. Here is the heart paper. It has to match the top for sure, and once it's here, I will pull the thread. So just make sure that all is flat and pull it. Actually do it as tight as possible. You can see that I try to make it very tight. Okay. Yes. Once you've finished creating the shape, press it, because after pressing we can take out the heart paper. I took out the paper, and my next step is to stitch along this seam allowance to secure it on the place. When I'll be stitching it, I will try to do it as close to the edge as possible. I would say about 1/8 away from the edge, or 1/16 away from the edge. Now we will work with the flap. We have two pieces and we need to stitch both of them at the side seam around, keeping a quarter-inch seam allowance. So basically we'll start here, do back tack, sew around and do back tack here. I hope you remember how much is the quarter-inch. So quarter-inch is, if this is the ruler, and the distance from the edge to here is 1 inch, then quarter-inch, it will be 1/4 part of the inch. So its distance from here to here is our seam allowance for the flap. After stitching around, we need to reverse the flap, the right side out. But to make sure that after we reverse it looks nice and there is no bulk at the edge, it's good to trim the seam allowance at the curve. I will, because this is 1/4, and I will trim it till 1/8. Only in the area of the curve, like this, and the same with the opposite one. Here. Now when I reverse it, it will look good. To make it flat, press it under the iron. I pressed it around, and it's always good to edge stitch. Edge stitch is the stitching around the edge. It's usually 1/16 away from the fold line. We have the base fabric, we have the flap and the pocket. Now on the fabric we'll need to find the place where we want to have our flap and stitch it. When we stitch it, we will be stitching on the wrong side. So once you find out where you want to place your pocket, this is the right side of the flap. Let me write it. So this is the right side of the flap, and our pocket will look like this after we're done. But before that, we need to attach the flap. I drew a line and marked the same distance from each side. And this line will help me to place the flap straight. And when I'll be attaching the flap, I will, because this is the right side of our fabric, I turn the flap with wrong side out, and I match with right side. And I will stitch it 1/4 inch along the bottom. And once I finish stitching, I can fold it, and we will see the right side in the end. But first, let's stitch it. We attach the flap, and we have seam allowance 1/4, because later we will need to fold it, and we do not need to have this much of bulk here. That's why it's very handy to trim the seam allowance from 1/4 inch to 1/8, which means to cut half of the seam allowance. I cut it exactly half. We're finished with the flap, and now we can start working with the pocket. First, we need to place it on the fabric where we want it to be located. Remember the line we drew here? We need to keep distance from this line half of the inch. And I will draw a second line. Here is 1/2 inch. Make sure that you center the pocket, because the flap is a little bit wider than the pocket itself. It is on each side, the difference between flap and the pocket has to be 1/8. In a second, I will show you what I mean by 1/8. Let me pin it first. You can notice that if I draw a vertical line, their edges don't match, and they don't match on each side because the flap is a little bit wider than the pocket itself. It has to be wider by 1/8. To remind you what is 1/8, okay, if this is the inch, 1/8 is the first line. We can see it. So the distance from edge to the first line is 1/8. Once you place the pocket, you need to top stitch it around using 1/16 seam allowance, because it basically the edge stitch. We need to be as close as possible to the edge, and try to follow the picture because here we will need to stitch it twice, because whenever you insert something or you put hand inside, the most pressure are on this side, and that's why, as you can see on the picture, it's good to make a small rectangle here. Here is the stitching. All you need to do now, once you're done with the pocket, you need to fold the flap, press it, and then we will stitch it 1/4 inch away from the fold line in order to keep it flat and make sure that it closes our pocket. The flap is pressed. Now I'll stitch it using 1/4 inch seam allowance. Always make a back tag, don't forget about this. We attach the flap, we attach the pocket, and the pocket is ready. Try to do it yourself at home, and believe me, it's very easy to do, and you can attach this pocket to anything, to the dress, to the pants at the back, or to the skirt. So hope you enjoyed the class today. This is the end, and I'll see you in a week. Enjoy the rest of the week. Bye bye.